As You Like It by William Shakespeare. Long ago, when France was divided into several dukedoms, there reigned in a dukedom a duke, Frederick. He usurped the dukedom from his brother, and the lawful duke lived with his faithful followers in exile in the forest of Arden. As they made the forest their home, they found it much sweeter than the court in which their experiences never made them happy. In the forest they had little care, so they passed their time in the shades of trees watching playful sports of the wild creatures. Winter was rather cruel, but the Duke would bear it without complaints. He knew that even the cold wind was his friend. It might bite, but would never be unkind and thankless like his brother. With the passage of time, he grew wiser, and he learned his lessons from the trees, the streams, and the stones in Arden. But when he thought of his dear daughter Rosalind, he felt sad. This Rosalind, the only daughter of the exiled duke, was not allowed to live with her father. This Rosalind, the only daughter of the exiled duke, was not allowed to live with her father. For the usurper's own daughter, Celia, needed a companion. So Rosalind was kept in the court, and the two sisters became very close friends. Celia was quite aware of the injustice her father had done to the lawful duke. So she always tried to treat Rosalind with kindness, and whenever Rosalind's thoughts of her father's made her sad, Cecilia did everything to comfort and cheer her. One day the two sisters learned from the Duke that a wrestling match was to be held, and they could see if they wished. Cecilia thought that it might amuse Rosalind, so she decided to see the match. When the Duke saw Celia and Rosalind, he said, "I am afraid you will not find much to enjoy, for it is an unequal game. The young man who is to fight with the best wrestler of the land is a stranger. I am sure he did be killed, so I did like you to speak to him and try to dissuade him." The sisters agreed to do their best and spoke to the stranger about the danger the fight was fought with. But the young man would not listen. He said, "I must thank you for showing such anxiety for me. I have none in this world to care for me, none to shed tears if I am killed. So please forgive me, for I don't see why I should be sorry to die." So the match began. Both Celia and Rosalind prayed for the young man and wished him to win. But Rosalind felt that the stranger was more like her, for she was alone like him. So her pity for him was akin to love. The young wrestler fought with courage and skill, and to everybody's surprise, defeated the famous wrestler. The Duke was very pleased with him, and the two sisters were very happy. The Duke then wished to know the name of the young man. The young man said, "I am Orlando. I am the youngest son of my father, Sir Romuald de Boys." The answer did not please the Duke. Orlando's father was dead now, but he was a loyal friend of the exiled Duke. The usurper hated to hear the names of his brother's friends, so now he hated Orlando too, though he admired him for his courage. But Rosalind was very happy to know all this, for she knew how her father loved Sir Roland. Celia and Rosalind did not fail to see how angry the Duke was to hear the name of Sir Roland. Orlando too saw this, and he looked troubled. Rosalind spoke to him with kindness and love, and taking her chain, she gave it to the young man. She said, "Wear this for me, for I have nothing more valuable than this to give you." Celia could see that Rosalind was in love with Orlando, but her father did not like her and Rosalind to be alone with Orlando. The name of Sir Roland reminded him of many nobles in his dukedom who were still loyal to the exiled duke. As he found Rosalind with Orlando, he appeared to be hating her too, for he knew how she was pitied by many because of their loyalty to her father. She angrily told Rosalind to leave the palace, for his daughter would not have her as a companion any longer. Celia wept and implored her father to let Rosalind stay with her. But Frederick was afraid of Rosalind, fearing that she was too clever for Celia, so she ordered Rosalind to leave, ignoring Celia's protests. Celia loved Rosalind too dearly to let her go alone. She also decided to go with her. That night, Celia and Rosalind left the palace in disguise. They thought that it would not be safe for them to travel in rich clothes like princesses, so Rosalind dressed herself as a country folk and Celia as a young maid. They were brother and sister, Ganymede and Elena. Thus they travelled in disguise and at last came to the forest of Arden. Their suffering was great, for they had neither a shelter nor any food. Tired and hungry, they found life miserable, but still they moved on, hoping to find the exiled duke. Meanwhile, Orlando too had arrived in the forest of Arden with his faithful servant Adam. He had to leave in a hurry, for Ferdinand was already plotting with his elder brother Oliver to have him killed. Oliver was very wicked, and the Duke knew this. It was Oliver who set Orlando to wrestle with the cruel wrestler who was notorious for killing many men who dared to fight with him. But when Orlando defeated that killer, Oliver joined the Duke to find some other ways to kill his brother. Orlando grew suspicious, and to save his life, he fled with his old servant. When they arrived in the forest of Arden, they too were tired and hungry. The old servant did not have food for a long time, and now he was almost dying with hunger. He lay down under a tree and said to Orlando in a weak voice, "Oh, my young master, I cannot walk any farther. Let this place be my grave." Orlando was sorry to find his faithful servant in that state, but he comforted him, saying, "What makes you despair, my old friend? Rest your tired limbs for some time in this shade, and do not talk of dying." Then Orlando went in search of food, for he must save the life of his faithful servant. As he wandered in the forest, he came to that part where the Duke lived with his friends. The Duke saw him and welcomed him to share the food that was just served. Orlando was delighted to hear the Duke speak so gently, but he told the Duke about Adam, who was left behind, dying of hunger. The Duke sent him immediately to bring the old man there. When Orlando brought Adam, he was laid down and fed with care. Adam felt better now, for he had got back his strength. When they had all taken their food, the Duke asked Orlando who he was. Orlando told him the truth, and the Duke was pleased to know that he was the son of his dear friend, Sir Lowland. After this, Orlando and Adam lived with the exiled Duke. Rosalind and Celia, or Ganymede and Elena, too had found a shelter. They met a shepherd who was about to sell his hut. They bought the hut and with some provision of food. But as they lived in the hut and wandered about in search of the Duke, they chanced upon a strange sight. They saw the name of Rosalind carved on the trees and sonnets addressed to Rosalind fastened to them. As they stood wondering, Orlando came there. He did not recognize Rosalind and Celia in their disguise, but Rosalind recognized the man she loved, and to her delight she found Orlando wearing the chain she gave him. Orlando was surprised to find the shepherd resembling his dear Rosalind in his graceful air, but then he knew the shepherd was Ganymede and Rosalind could not be in the forest of Arden. He told Ganymede that he loved Rosalind, and he wrote the sonnets in her praise. Rosalind pretended to be cross, for the trees were being spoiled by him, but then told him, "I am prepared to take the place of your Rosalind and comfort you, if you visit our cottage every day." I will do this only to cure you of your love. Orlando agreed to her proposal, for he thought it would give him the chance of saying all that he wanted to say to his Rosalind. So from that day Orlando came to the cottage and Ganymede said and did everything to him that Rosalind would have done. But instead of curing him, she only made Orlando more passionately devoted to Rosalind. In this way they spent several days in the forest. One day Ganymede met the exiled duke and spoke to him, but Ganymede would not disclose her true identity to him. Though the search of Orlando and Rosalind ended in happy reunion with the exiled duke, all was not well with the forest of Arden. Oliver had followed Orlando with his evil plan to kill him. One day, when he was asleep in the forest, a snake came there to bite him. But as it saw Orlando approaching, the snake went into the bushes. Just then, Orlando saw his brother and the lioness ready to pounce on him. He forgot what his cruel brother had done to him, and taking out his sword, attacked the lioness. Thus he saved his brother from the poisonous snake and the hungry lioness. In his fierce fight with the lioness, he hurt himself and one of his arms was badly mauled. While Orlando was fighting with the lioness, Oliver woke up and saw his brother killing the beast. Orlando stood before his brother, who was already ashamed of the cruel treatment he had meted out to him. So the two brothers were united in an emotional embrace. Orlando was happy to see the change in his brother's heart, but he was bleeding profusely and he was too weak to visit Ganymede. So he sent Oliver to the cottage and tell Ganymede what prevented him from seeing her. Oliver went there and told Ganymede and Alina how Orlando had saved his life. The repentance of Oliver moved them and Alina fell in love with him. But Rosalind forgot that she was in disguise of a man and fainted to hear of the danger her Orlando had been in. Oliver tried to console her and said that she would be brave enough to bear the shock. When Oliver returned to Orlando, he told his brother of what had happened and how Ganymede had fainted. Then he told him of his love for Elena. He said that he had decided to marry Elena and live the life of a shepherd. He said, I will give all my land and the house to you and live in the forest with Elena. Orlando was happy to hear all this and he said, you have my consent, my brother, and tomorrow your wedding will be celebrated before the Duke and his friends. Go and tell your Elena of the arrangement. So Oliver went back to the cottage to talk to Elena, while Ganymede came to be with her injured love. Ganymede approved of the marriage between Elena and Oliver, and she said, if you truly wish to marry your Rosalind, she too would be here for the wedding. Next morning, Oliver and Elena came to the Duke, and Orlando came with them. Everybody wondered where the bride for Orlando should be, for everybody knew that the two marriages were to be celebrated on the same day. Then Ganymede entered and said to the Duke, do you approve of your daughter's marriage with Orlando, sir? The Duke answered, I do, with all my blessings. Then Ganymede asked Orlando, will you marry Rosalind if I bring her here? Said Orlando, I will. Ganymede and Elena went out and dressed themselves as Rosalind and Celia. When they repaired, Rosalind kneeled before her father and asked for her blessings. Then she told him how she and Celia had left the palace in disguise and lived in the forest as shepherd boy and girl. So now their marriages were celebrated and everybody was happy. In the meantime, another strange thing had happened. Frederick also came into the forest with a large army to bring back his daughter Celia. But as he entered the forest, he met a religious man who brought about a change in his heart. He was no longer the wicked usurper, but truly repentant for all his wicked deeds. So he sent a messenger to the lawful duke telling him that his dukedom was restored to him, and he now must return to his dukedom with all his loyal friends. The news made them all very happy, and the Duke returned to his palace with his friends.